I gotta get my monitor fixed.
All right. We're a pretty
I
unformal group here, so I'm pretty happy that everybody's with us this evening. Um, we're going to kick off for the Greene County Skywarn group and others because there's at some point in time we're going to have others that join us here for a live streamed Q&A session that we hope to have every week. So the big news is the 2020 Easter tornado outbreak, and I've got some information here. And to be honest with you, I'm reading right off the Wikipedia page. So if you want to read along, you certainly can go over there. So we've got. It starts out with a series of destructive tornadoes affected the southeast United States on Easter Sunday and Monday. That would be April 12th and 13th. Several were responsible for prompting tornado emergencies, including the first one to be issued by the National Weather Service in Charleston, South Carolina. A large squall line formed and tracked through the mid-Atlantic on April 13th, prompting multiple tornado warnings and watches. 15 total watches were produced during the course of the event, 2 of which were designated particularly dangerous situations. There were 37 fatalities reported. So the most recent number that I have is there have been 119 tornadoes that have been confirmed. And we want to thank the folks at the National Weather Services throughout the affected area because all of them have teams that go out and do the confirmations. And so those guys are working really hard now, even though the Skywarn folks tend to work the hardest during the event. Kind of carrying on here to the synopsis of what took place, the Storm Prediction Center was watching this somewhere around April 8th, where they were outlining a 15% probability for severe weather within 25 miles of a point from central Texas eastward into the Florida Panhandle and eastern Georgia, and that was valid for April 11 and 12. These threat areas were later refined with the introduction of a Day 3 moderate risk, the fourth of 5 threat levels across northeastern Louisiana through central Alabama on April 10th. Historically, the SPC only issues one day 3 moderate risk every year, and half of those over the previous decade were later upgraded to high risk, the highest threat level. So over subsequent days, the significant mid-level shortwave trough progressed eastward across the United States. By the pre-dawn hours of April 12th, mid-level cooling associated with the feature overspread the Edwards Plateau, hill country, and much of central Texas. Accordingly, an intense line of severe storms developed along a dry line, while vigorous convective development formed farther east. These thunderstorms were initially isolated in nature, but soon coalesced into a mesoscale convective system, as they encountered an enhanced corridor of warm air streaming northward, as well as a very strong wind shear. The storm complex progressed across northern Louisiana through late morning and early afternoon hours, contributing to multiple tornado debris signatures. One such tornado in Monroe was rated EF3. In advance of the line, the lifting warm front aided in formation of a very moist, highly unstable, and highly sheared environment across and northeastern Louisiana and much of Mississippi. Accordingly, the SPC issued a particularly dangerous situation tornado watch into the late evening hours. A weather balloon launched from Jackson, Mississippi at 1800 UTC revealed the presence of a capping inversion across the region. This cap was expected to weaken across central Mississippi, while forecasters expressed more uncertainty about its longevity across southern Mississippi and Louisiana. A small area of low pressure progressed across northwestern Mississippi. It caused surface winds to turn out of the east-southeast, enhancing the potential for tornadoes. as a cluster of storms across central Mississippi progressed towards the northeast. It began to intensify and develop supercell characteristics with an attendant threat of strong tornadoes. Farther south, two distinct supercells developed within an environment where long-track significant tornadoes were favored, both exhibiting extremely strong rotation and distinct debris signatures. Based on previous storm signatures in similar environments, the SPC remarked this is an exceptionally rare event, and estimated tornadic winds of 170 to 205 miles per hour, consistent with a tornado of EF4 or EF5 intensity. After conducting damage surveys, meteorologists identified two intense tornadoes, with the first supercell, one that killed 3 people northwest of Salem, 2 southwest of Bassville, and a second from the south of Bassville southwest to Pachuta, both of EF4 intensity. An EF3 tornado was identified with the second supercell. So, I'm going to call that the beginning, because we really found that part of southern Mississippi quite exciting. I know some of you may have seen the Pecos Hank video where he was there. He actually was in the So-So location and assisted in, well, I guess it was kind of a rescue, but the guy was found. And so it was pretty darn exciting, and we ended up streaming until 2 in the morning and came up with some pretty good weather radar information. So with that, I'm going to first turn to Patty and let her do some comments and set up for our questions and answers.
All right. So one of the things that let's do an audio test here. How do I sound?
You're great. You sound fabulous.
All right. So one of the things we thought about, if we're going to do this weekly, is we need to come up with topics. And my thought on this is to try to take things in a logical progression, because I know that there are a lot of folks out there, not just us, who are looking for weather information. And the great thing about our quarantine time is that there is so much more of it being made available right now. It is phenomenal. In fact, I've got a little presentation I'd like to give toward the end of this that will kind of kick it off. What is the basics? What actually causes and drives our weather? And I think it'd be a good one to start with. But we need to come up with some other topics to follow. That being said, I have reached out to the National Weather Service for some SCUT training. I have not found anything to replace the DVD that I have that's really directed towards spotters or net controls. I tried to order a new one the other night, and they're not shipping right now. They're moving their office. So I'll kind of on hold on both of those. And do we want to open our audience here to do we want to open our audience so that we post our link to the spotter page so that they can join in with us, live now? Here's our weekly get together. And then we'll need someone to watch for comments or questions as we go along. That's my question to you for the night.
Okay, do you want me to talk first?
Go right ahead, Rodney.
Well, I guess the biggest thing right now is that we're going to have to develop a consistent schedule. That way we can make sure that our audience is kind of conditioned to be like, oh, I have to be there because they're going to be, doing their thing at 7 o'clock in the evening. It's kind of one of those things. It's got to be on the right channel, and you got to be on, all those different things. So, same thing when you go and watch a webcast, whether it be, Ham Nation or, anything else that gets done. it has to be scheduled. So I figured that's obviously something we're going to have to work out. I mean, as far as the training is concerned, I'm very excited and optimistic about what that can do, what kind of interaction we will be able to get for this channel. I'm looking forward to see what Jungle Chasers will be offering in the future. And I mean, as far as that's concerned, I do have a few questions lined up, so I'll let Franklin say a few things if he has, any statements there, and I guess I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Rodney. Kind of what you were saying, Patty, as long as everyone else is in agreement, I think that would be a great idea to, post in both the Southwest Missouri spotter page and the Greene County spotter group. That way we can get some of our spotters and net controls maybe interacting as well. I definitely could, if you guys wanted to, I could, watch chat and see if we get questions from that, and maybe that might prompt someone who maybe might want to come forward and maybe be a guest one week on the live stream. I've got a couple questions that I have thought about. They're probably basic questions, but I think maybe they'd be something that someone who isn't in a spotter community, who maybe has an interest in weather but doesn't participate in Skywarn, might ask. And then maybe like some beginners that maybe they're thinking about getting their amateur radio license, or they just got their license but they're not for sure how they can help out. So I guess kind of whenever we start doing the questions part of it, I've got a couple of those questions there as well.
Okay, well, so what we could do, Patty, did you have specific questions that you wanted to throw out there that we could outline, or?
Well, my first question was, what audience do we want to do this to? I guess you're kind of kicking this off already tonight with requesting that the link get posted, and we'll see where we go with that. What is a good time for us to get together if we're doing this weekly? What do we want to look at time-wise?
Any day is good on my end, and the interesting part of it is that if we have an odd time when we're not all available, this can be recorded and sent up as a premiere later. So, we've got a lot of availability with this. I don't necessarily have to actually stream it. We can just do a recording and then upload it and tell it, hey, let this thing out on 7 p.m. on Thursday. I quite honestly, it doesn't seem to matter what night that we do this. There's always going to be some conflicting thing going on in the neighborhood. Like tonight, the NARCnet's going. That pulls hams away and potential others. If we do it tomorrow, we've got our own nets that are going. Wednesday's kind of the dead day, but that anytime's good for me. So I guess over to you, Rodney. What do you think?
I like the idea of us doing the recording. That way, then, like I said, if we've got a consistent schedule and it can be premiered at a given time, that'll give us the opportunity to tackle any technical issues that we might have ahead of time. If we need to do any type of editing for content as well as time, because as ham radio operators, we tend to get a little bit long-winded, and as weather enthusiasts, we'll get even more. We're full of hot air, just like all the updrafts that we have to talk about. So The thing that we have to work with is, I think, my schedule. Of course, I'm very active in my job, and a lot of times it's very unpredictable. So I feel that if there's some way we can just tie it together on a time where, of course, Patty has a very strict schedule as well. So it's just like you say, we're just going to have to kick it around. We may have to record on some nights where we wouldn't record on another night. It's just going to be, hey, when's everybody available? Let's do this. So
And then maybe have a regular day that we post it.
Mhm.
I think that's
True.
a good idea.
We could do that.
And time limited. The other night went hours and hours and hours and hours, and we're going to go over, no doubt, some nights, but to have some kind of time limit on it, like an hour and a half, because you get beyond that and it's real uncomfortable for a lot of folks. That would be my input on that.
Franklin,
As far as
go ahead.
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, I think that's. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
think that's a good ideal. Kind of, have a general ideal that, we're going to go, like you said, maybe an hour, hour and a half. Might go over a little bit sometimes. Now, definitely whenever we have, like where we're actually following active weather, particularly if it's a huge outbreak like something that happened on Easter Sunday, yeah, we might then go 3, 4, 5 hours. But in general, for the regular shows in between that, yeah, I think a time limit is good. We can kind of do it a couple different ways, just kind of how a lot of people, I think, do on YouTube, because I have over the last few years, particularly some radio and photography related and a little bit of weather stuff, have watched quite a few YouTube videos. Typically, I think they usually record them, then have a regular date and time that they post them, particularly if it's more kind of like a subject-based show and not really necessarily something where you have like a group of people, or where you're interacting with other people, or maybe like where you're doing like an interview or something. We could do them where do them all live, or we could do a mixture of both. Whenever maybe everyone can't get together on the regular night, maybe we record it a day or two before, then post it at that time. That say this week everyone can get together on Thursday at 7 o'clock. Then we just post, hey, we're going to do the show live this week. So there's kind of a couple, 2 or 3 different options that we could go with that. But yeah, I think definitely for the regularly scheduled shows, definitely a time limit, because like you said, not only for us and whoever we might have on the show with us, but also for the people watching. After an hour, hour and a half, they may not want to watch longer than that.
Right.
Now, if I could say something, I just now thought of this. Our first intent was to get people involved. So if it's going to be a situation where we do record it, we're going to have a silent audience, because that comment section is not going to be there. They're going to have to leave comments after the fact. So in situations where we do go live, that's when we would be more active with the people that are part of our audience. But in most cases, we're going to have to just be open to some of the comments, some of the reactions that people will get after we've already recorded.
Yeah.
So that's something that we have to kind of be aware of.
And if I'm not mistaken, I at least know, just like from my personal channel, anytime that you get a comment made on a video, or you make a comment on a video and someone replies to it, the channel owner will get a notification on that. So I don't think that will necessarily be so much where we have to like have someone constantly go and check each video each day to see if there was a comment posted, because they'll automatically get that. But what I was thinking, everyone, please chime in if this is not what you're thinking. But I was thinking, just from what we discussed before, we'd probably do as many of them live as we could. And, maybe do like a recorded one that's posted after the fact, like if Rodney has to work on the night and the time that we decide to do the live show, or if for some reason, say, 3 of us can't make it, or we've got something going on that just can't be changed to a different time. And, we could go ahead and definitely, post that, hey, this week's due to scheduling conflicts, everyone can't get together on Thursday night. So we'll have a pre-recorded show posted and then, do as many of them as we can live.
So I participated in, and Rodney did too, the Linux in the Ham Shack podcast. Mm-hmm. And he does that scheduled programming, which he does not have the likelihood like we would, where we would jump in on a potential event out in the world of severe weather, or put, my first thought on this one was live streaming the Greene County Skywarn net, just to get everybody to see what goes on in the background. But having a weekly show, it would be easy to do many of those possible live, but if we have to, we can record it. So we've got that option. The other thing about doing a premiere, one of us could be on the premiere when it comes out, because it occurs like a live event on YouTube. So then you can be there to respond to comments, which I think is really important, because we want to be responsive to folks that are interested in what we're doing.
The other thing is, we don't all have to be present. It wouldn't hurt my feelings if I had something priority occur and I couldn't be here. I've seen this on other podcasts that somebody's just gone for a week. We could rotate in maybe a guest from the regional or a guest from the weather service or something on that week. And hopefully we're going to have guest presenters anyway. At least that's my hope.
Yeah.
Well, we've got, not to interrupt, sorry, but we've got Joplin group that you and I have met with. There's the Benton County group. We've got Ava. There's a whole bunch of folks in the area. Cade is not able to make it. He's kind of a part of our regular group, but yeah, we've got the potential of bringing in outside people, which I think is good, because it's always good to see a little different way of doing things.
Sure.
And another thing, there's different ways to communicate with our audience. Just since we've had the opportunity to be involved with, like, say, the Linux and the Ham Shack podcast, we were introduced into their Discord chat. And I can tell you that's a very, very active channel. They get on there. They say hi to everybody every morning. How's it going? This is what I'm doing throughout the day. If we wanted to do something like that in the near future, we could establish that same kind of thing. That way, if someone wants to be part of the interaction with us, we could interact with them at any given time, or whoever might happen to be available. So that's something we could throw around too, if whoever wants to do that, because that's a very active way of communicating with your audience.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I don't know a lot about it. Discord is kind of a new thing to me. I've never really researched it, but I know it's extremely popular, particularly with younger people. It's like everyone's like, well, are you on Discord? Are you on Discord? Do you do Discord? And I'm like, no, not yet. But that definitely is something, that if we want to look at, that I think would probably be something that could benefit us, definitely.
Right, and we could even possibly get in contact with Russ at some point and see how they do that. I know that through a lot of their fundraising programs, they have special, people who donate towards the channel, and that would give them an open spot to maybe even have kind of a voice in what we do, as far as, Patreon or anything like that. I know that there's different levels there. So, like I said, there's a lot of potential here, and we can only just get better, and we can learn from our mistakes. We just got to know what's working and what doesn't work for us.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think we'll get it as we go. there's a lot of folks that have channels that I watch, and I've got a Discord account, so I've done a little bit of that. I tell you, the chat sure moves a whole lot faster than it does over here on YouTube.
I'm sure.
So anyway, yeah, I could see us really promoting this for what it is, and it may take all of us for sure. One person has expertise in one has expertise in something else. So, all right.
So, speaking of all of us, I don't believe we even kicked off with introductions.
Oh, no.
We've named each other along the way,
Right.
but we really didn't introduce ourselves to our audience. So I'll kick that off, and then I'll hand it off to Rodney. We'll go from there. So I am Patty. My call sign is KD0AEL. I am the Regional Skywarn Coordinator for Southwest Missouri and 3 counties in Southeast Kansas. They've invited me along for this great ride, and I look forward to participating every week. The group is actually Greene County Skywarn, of which Franklin is the coordinator. He'll introduce himself here in a moment. And but we hope for this to grow and be an educational channel, a fun channel, a channel to learn from as we learn. And that's our big hope here. Rodney?
All right. Well, my name is Rodney Maloney. My amateur call sign is Kilo Zero Foxtrot Zulu, and working with Franklin, I'm one of the secondary admins for the Skywarn channel. I also participate as a net control for Greene County as a secondary in most cases, and even on the regional, I'm also considered a secondary on the regional as well. So I do my best to donate what time I can offer to the public, and of course, anything I can do to learn to be better at what I do, to be able to help someone down the future is really where I go for. So that's really all I got. I'll turn it over to Franklin and let him introduce himself.
Thank you, Rodney. My name, as you've heard, is Franklin. My call sign is KD0RSJ, and I am the new coordinator for Greene County Skywarn. I'm kind of wanting to build the group. We've had a good group of net controls and spotters since I've been participating. I've had my amateur license since April of 2012, and I've been I was kind of a little involved in Skywarn during that time, but I probably didn't get involved until later that year, first part of 2013. And I've been net control since then. I've assisted with the regional net control for the last, probably at least 2 or 3 years now. And then whenever Patty stepped up to take over as the regional coordinator, she asked me if I would be Greene County coordinator, and I said yes. I'm excited about it, and kind of like I said, I kind of want to grow the group, add more people to it, and I feel this live stream podcast, whatever you want to call it, is kind of a way to hopefully help do that and let more people know about not just what Greene County does, but just Skywarn in general throughout the United States, because they really help support and assist the National Weather Service all throughout the country. And so just anything that we can do to help promote that and to let people know what Skywarn is about, I think it's a great thing. And that's about all I got right now.
All
And
right.
our producer.
The producer whose face is not visible, I just made an adjustment so you can see me a little better. My name is Steve, and my call sign is KA0SPM. I was the first Greene County Skywarn net control. And back in them days, it started out with, we had a major tornado outbreak here in the Ozarks, and somebody needed to pick up the damage reports to free up our regular regional net control, and I did that on the 9-1 repeater that we have. And then Patty and I were both kind of in that opinion that we need to have a local net. We need to have something going on here in the county, so it frees up the regional from having to do that duty as well as the regional net. And so that's my start out. I licensed as a ham in 1983 as a novice and upgraded to tech in 85. So been at this a while in the ham radio world. Skywarn, I think, really got going back. I think we both kind of did back when the Pierce City tornado hit, wasn't it, Patty? Something like that.
Yeah, at least that's where, interest peaked. I didn't get my license till 2010. So.
But.
No, 2008. But, we kind of jumped in with both feet at that point. So it's grown from there, and with Jim Sellers' blessings, we grew Greene County to where it is now. And when Jim left and the Weather Service asked me to step into his shoes, that was something I totally didn't expect. But I'm very proud of what Greene County has become. And I see so many other groups around us that have just as much passion for protecting their community and providing good information out there so people can be safe. That's one thing that I really dearly love about Southwest Missouri Skywarn participation, is the passion behind the people that do this. So
I'm going to mention that right up front. I am not the weather guy. You may think that I am, because I'll quote on occasion some pretty in-depth topics on weather, but I am not the weather guy. I am the radio guy and the tech guy. So there's going to be times when I'm like, yeah, well, you guys carry on because I'm going to go play radio. And I hope we can bring... Or you
look at me and go, where do you need me to go? And you go, spot.
Right. Yeah. I do have that well-trained, able to look at storms, but I guess the thing of it is that this channel is not just about weather. There's amateur radio involved as well, because all of us are hams. We've got one guy that has not yet become a ham, but we won't let him rest until he does. So, I'm kind of excited about that. So, all right.
And also, I would be willing to bet there might be just a tad little bit of photography thrown in there as well, being three of us are avid amateur photographers.
Yeah,
just a little.
Yeah. That's I hope that is going to be one of those added flavors to the channel that makes people excited, waiting for our next video, as much as Patty and I anticipate the next Pecos Hank video that comes out.
Could we aspire to be that good? Yes.
I can't wait, So, well, Patty, did you have the next item on the agenda?
If there's no other topics to add to our little list here, I do have a short presentation. I think it's about 15 minutes long.
Okay.
One thing that I was hoping to kick off with was weather basics. And one thing that I think I know I was lacking in is, what are the fronts? What do they do? We always hear it takes a trigger mechanism to kick off storms. What are those triggers? And we haven't gotten that in our spotter training. And that's not to fault anyone. It's not for us to know. We're not the forecasters. But I think it's important to know, where does our weather come from? What are we looking for? When we're looking at the radar, what can we track? Sunday night, Easter Sunday, when all those poor people were having their homes destroyed with those storms, there was this little green line, or red line, Steve tells me, my color blindness.
It was red.
that that was trailing behind these storms to the south and west. That was the dry line. That was the triggering mechanism for those storms. And the presentation here, I actually watched yesterday. It was put out by the National Weather Service in Kansas City. They did a live stream, and she does a great job. So, if there's nothing else from you guys, I'll go ahead and pull this up and share my screen.
Well,
Just
I mean,
real
we
quick,
did put
or
some
go ahead,
questions.
Rodney.
Yeah, I mean, I threw some questions together, and I mean, if
Okay.
anything, we can table them for later because we do want to
No,
give
go ahead.
you plenty of time. So this is digging deep, okay? So this is just one of those things where, I wanted to get something that I didn't know about that I wanted to know a little bit more about that maybe one of you guys know, or like what Steve says, turns into Google Ninja, and he just goes to town and starts finding whatever we need to know. But do you want me to go ahead and just kind of read the questions, and then
Sure.
that's something we can table for later? That way she's got time to do her thing. Or do we want to just jump in and try to answer what we've got tonight?
I think what I'd like to see happen with this is we formulate a list, and then once we get off the live stream, we can continue our discussion about what do we want to see next, how do we want to present this, who wants to present it, so that we're not tying up our audience with that information.
Sure.
But I think it would be great for the audience to hear what we're thinking, where we'd like to go with this.
Okay. Well, then just to touch on some of the questions that are going to be, questioned here. My first question was, what conditions in the atmosphere has to be present for tropospheric ducting to occur? That's basically the same term as when the bands open up. And this is kind of a two-part question. Why is the VHF frequencies only the ones that tend to get affected? So that was the first question that I had. The next question I had was, can storms still form without an updraft? I know that sounds weird. I probably know the answer to that. But, everybody talks about how the updraft is the key thing. But we have just little standard showers here and there. That's not considered a storm necessarily. But you have to have that lift. And so a lot of times I'm just questioning myself, can storms still develop without actually having an updraft? So that was one of the other questions I had. I've got two more, and I'll try not to take up any more time. Why are positive charged lightning bolts more deadly and more rare than negative charged lightning bolts? And so how are they different, and why are they, the positive so rare? And then, of course, we've touched on this a few times before, especially in our lives. We talk about the difference between level 2 and level 3 radar. So the question that most people might ask is, well, is there a level 1? Does the National Weather Service possess a magic superpower that they're able to see everything even better than what we can see as amateurs, So we can discuss maybe the difference between level 2 and level 3, but is there something out there that's even better than that? So that's my 4 questions for what it's worth, and I'll turn it over to Franklin. If he's got some questions, we can go from there.
Okay, thanks, Rodney, and I think those are all great questions. Mine are, like I said before, kind of basic, but I think that there surely are probably people out there that are wondering these. The first one's kind of a combination weather and amateur radio question. What class of license do I have to participate in Skywarn if I want to, and what equipment do I need? Someone who's maybe looking at getting their license, or maybe just got their license, they're interested in whether they kind of hear a little bit of what Skywarn does, and they think, hey, that's something that I'd like to do. I think it's interesting. I'd like to maybe help the community through this. So, do I have to have a special license for it? Can I just get the introductory level, the technician license, or do I need something more than that? And what equipment do I need to actually participate in a net. Then my second question, which I think is just anyone who has any kind of an interest in weather, whether it's just because they're weather enthusiasts, they're interested in it, or they just want to know so that they can better help prepare and protect themselves and their family during an event. What do the different types of advisories and watches and warnings mean? So kind of to break it down into kind of like two different parts. What's the difference between an advisory, a watch, and a warning? And then kind of the second thing, you've kind of somewhat, in some cases, you've got kind of like two sets of types of watches and warnings. And the best one that I can think of to illustrate that is flood watches and warnings. What's the difference between a flood watch or warning versus a flash flood watch or warning? So I figure there's probably a lot of people that they see these on the news, they hear them on the radio, but what do they mean exactly? So, both of these questions probably maybe need a little bit of time to prepare answers for, but I just wanted to go ahead and throw them out there so that we can kind of be working on them, and kind of some people that may be watching, may be anticipating in an upcoming episode or two, they might get the answers to those.
Excellent. I think all those are excellent questions.
I'll
Steve.
jump in with the one that I had, and that was the pressing one, is the information on the SKU-T chart. What does it mean? What does it has numbers along the bottom that indicate something that I'm not clear on. I did get some information about the lapse rates, which is, if you hear someone who's in this head over heels, you will hear them talk about lapse rates. And, as Rodney said, I Google ninja'd it. That's my term. And I've come up with some information on that, which is surprisingly simple, which I did not realize. Now, I noticed the guys, Patty and I were watching a SKU-T demonstration from Norman, and they were talking about how all this works. And to be honest with you, it was like when I started amateur radio in the 80s, I knew that they were speaking English, but I knew nothing about what they were talking about.
So can we back up just a minute? When Steve's referring to the SKU-T, for those that might watch this and don't know, when the National Weather Service sends out their balloons twice a day or even more during potential times of severe weather, they send up a box that they call a radiosonde. And that box picks up things like temperature aloft, wind speeds. It picks up moisture. All that information gets sent back to computers, and it's calculated. And that information then is used to produce a forecast. And I apologize for the radio; it's out of my reach right now.
That's fine. We're hams. That's always the way it is. That's always there.
So on the Storm Prediction Center website, there is a place to go for that information. We, as net controls, are hoping to learn more about this information to guide our judgment on, do we really need to watch this system? How prepared do we need to be? When do we need to get our spotters out there? It's all going to be part of that package that we do in our preparations, and I think it's important to know. So lapse rates is just one part of that, and I believe that's called the LCL. Am I correct?
Yeah, I believe that's your cloud deck. That's the cloud heights, the LCL. And again, I studied this and I got some answers. And the truth is, I'll have to continue studying it because it's kind of it's an in-depth subject. It really is.
Yeah, it is. That is.
And we can learn a lot, interestingly enough, from just fair weather. If you watch the soundings like today compared to yesterday, we had one of those Chamber of Commerce days here in the Ozarks where it was absolute bluebird skies, not a cloud anywhere. As the day progressed, the clouds came in. Tonight I noticed there was some precipitation on the radar with a forecasted amounts of rain. Doesn't look like much, but those measurements on the radio som and the soundings, they would all indicate that this is going to happen. And it's I don't know. I guess to me that's kind of a fascinating subject, because if you talk to any of these television news people or weather people, this is how they forecast. This is what they use, and they've been doing it forever.
I have pulled up a view of today's observed soundings from 1200 Zulu, and so people get an idea of what we're actually talking about. As you could see just from the picture, it is quite complex, a lot of information. Some of the main things we're going to look at as we grow and learn is going to be the most unstable CAPE, the SIN, the LCL, and the lift index. Those are the things that we need to learn. From the training I've had on this, and I still know very, very little at this point. But we're also going to look at wind shear and how do we find that on this. And photographs may come later. And I won't go into great detail here, but this is just what we're talking about. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know even just myself, I have seen these sounding analyses. I don't really know how to read them, so even just for myself, I would love that kind of information to better have an ideal of, this may be a day that we really need to watch and make sure that, we've got someone ready to go, and, this is kind of a day that, the ingredients just aren't there.
Exactly. And I mean, the thing about it is, we, as whether it be amateur radio operators or weather enthusiasts, whatnot, we only know as much as we can, digest, if you will, what we're willing to learn, what we're willing to understand from the training we get from the National Weather Service. The first thing we have to let people know is we're not trained meteorologists. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to have a situation where we may not be 100% sure where we're at. And that's where, obviously, you should turn to the experts. Look to your local TV and radio. Go to the National Weather Service. They are the experts. They're the ones that are telling us how to do it. But the more that we can better equip ourselves, we're just that little extra piece of the puzzle. So I think that's really what it comes down to, and that's what I'm looking forward to seeing us do in this particular channel.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Rodney, I'll tell you what, is the fun part is when there is a TV meteorologist saying one thing and the National Weather Service is saying something else. And I'm using the old farmer technique of going outside and looking around. And we all disagree. It's going to be a fun day.
And you have to understand the dynamics. I know you've seen Steve and I bicker. Sunday when I kept walking out the door at work and I was going, this is dead. And he's like, but that's not what they said. Well, you didn't read the HWO from 1230. I read it after I walked out the door and went, this is dead. For us, anyway. Mm-hmm. The instability wasn't there, and the sun never came out to fire things off. And by 7 o'clock in the evening, it's like the cold front's here. I'm not going back outside again. So,
well, I wanted it. I wanted it to be here so we could activate the Greene County Net, so we could get that live. I just wasn't willing to accept the truth.
Oh my. So I see that we're about 10 till the hour, and if we're going to hold this down to an hour or so, if you guys don't mind, I do have this little brief presentation from Kansas City, and then we can do our closings, and then we can shut down the feed and continue on with our discussion as to where we're going with this. If you don't mind my taking over that lead there. So let
you're
me,
good to go.
okay. Hey, let me
introduce
screen share
you,
again.
Patty Palmer.
All right. So I hope the audio comes through.
Yeah, you're good.
Get her big enough for everybody to see.
Ah, there we go.
I don't hear it.
I don't think she started yet.
Well, she started. We're just getting a lot of bandwidth there.
I gotcha.
Can you hear her now?
Nope.
No, I can't.
Barely.
Okay. I don't know what I...
Send me the link.
Okay.
And I'll try to put it up on my side, okay?
Okay. I can do that.
So here we go. This is the first experience of little things that can kind of mess you up sometimes, you know. Hey, we're live, so what do? You roll with it and you keep going, and that's you know, going to be one of the nice ways of us to learn how to maneuver through this whole thing.
Sure.
You know, we learn how to fill in the gaps, you know, keep that dead time from being dead time. So that's really what we got to do. So if people will be patient with us, we'll be patient with ourselves, and eventually we'll have it down to an art. So Steve, I guess you're going to go ahead and jump in and see what happens.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to get, I'm going to pull that up, and I'll feed it in through my side.
Yeah, and it might be a little bit easier for Steve to pull that through to the stream through OBS than one of us trying to play it through our computer.
I am actually on the web version of Skype, so my computer doesn't die, and I don't trust Skype right now, and
we don't want to get in that conversation.
This wouldn't happen to be from the other night.
Don't start.
It sent me on 3 hours of diagnostics on my computer that have found nothing. So I really think it's either my video card or it's Skype, and I'll just leave it at that.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and kick her off, and we will hear what she has to tell us.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Weather Basics. My name is
I
Sarah,
don't see her.
and I am one of the meteorologists here at the National
He's
Weather
pushing
Service
it through, I think,
Weather
the
Forecast
actual
Office in
feed.
Kansas City.
Okay.
I wanted to start off first by just introducing myself
okay,
and then letting you know a little bit about me. So I am originally from St. Louis. I went to the University of Missouri, or Mizzou, to get my meteorology degree, MIZ. And I have been working here at the National Weather Service Weather Forecast Office for almost 4 years now. And prior to that, I worked at the National Weather Service Training Center, which is also here in Kansas City, developing training for NWS meteorologists all across the country. But that is enough about me for now. Let's go ahead and get started and learn some weather basics. So, when it comes to weather on Earth, it all begins with the sun. The sun sends its rays towards the Earth, and because the Earth is like a ball, it actually heats the Earth unevenly. And so really, like, the center of the Earth, where the equator is, receives the most sunlight, direct sunlight, and that actually is how, you know, they are the warmer part of the Earth. Whereas the polar regions on the top and bottom, the North and South Pole, they receive less sunlight. And so they're the colder parts of the Earth. Now that uneven heating and the fact that the Earth is on a 23.5-degree tilt helps us actually get our seasons. And so this image here is for the spring and fall equinox. And when we are going into spring and fall, that is when the Earth is being heated by the sun as evenly as possible. So both the north and southern hemispheres are getting roughly the same amount of sunlight. As we in the northern hemisphere head into our summer, we are actually tilted towards the sun. And you can see here, though, that the southern hemisphere is tilted away. And so that's why our seasons are opposite. So when we in the northern hemisphere are in our summer, they in the southern hemisphere are in their winter. And then again, when we head to our winter time, we are tilted away from the sun. And those, again, in Australia, the koala bears, everyone in the southern hemisphere is experiencing their summer. Now, I don't want you to think that the Earth is necessarily like wobbling around on its axis or anything. It stays on that 23.5-degree tilt, but because it revolves around the sun, that's how we are tilted towards the sun or tilted away. So right now we're in spring. The Earth is being heated as evenly as it can. As we head into summer, that is again when we are going to be tilted closer to the sun, so we're getting more sunlight, we get warmer temperatures. And then we'll go back in the fall, again, being as evenly heated as possible. And then later this year, when we head back to winter, we in the northern hemisphere are the ones that are tilted away from the sun, not getting quite as much sunlight. So we get our colder temperatures and that snow. Now, if we kind of zoom in and see what the sun does, in the Earth, once it comes down to the Earth, the sun rays actually pass through the atmosphere and are absorbed by the Earth's surface. And from there, the Earth's surface then emits that energy into the atmosphere. So the sun heats the ground heats the atmosphere. And that's also why, we have our warmest temperatures closer to the ground because of that. And so as we get up higher and higher, it actually gets colder the further away you are away from the ground. And so that's why when we're going to the mountains, we go up there and there's tends to be more snow, it's colder. Also, like say we're on an airplane, we take off, we're on our way to our cruising altitude. Airplanes always have to worry about icing because the temperature gets colder as it gets higher in the atmosphere. And now something I want to point out though here is the sun heats the ground, but it actually heats land differently than it heats water. So with land, it heats up faster and to higher temperatures than water does. And subsequently, it cools faster and to lower temperatures than water. And that's because water reflects a lot of that sunlight. It just doesn't absorb as much as the land does. So it takes longer and it just doesn't get quite as warm. Another way to think about this is with hurricane season. Now, we don't experience hurricanes really here in the middle part of the country, but we hear about them all the time. And the peak of hurricane season is actually in September. And that's because hurricanes love warm water. But while we're reaching our warmest time in July and August, the water, because it's taking a lot longer to heat up, it doesn't reach its warmest time until September. And then again, that's when we see our peak hurricanes. And so with that uneven heating of the land and the oceans and the water, we get uneven pressure distribution. And as you can see here, we'll get areas of higher pressure, areas of lower pressure. And one thing that the Earth always tries to do, and it's with multiple things, is reach a balance or reach equilibrium. And so it doesn't like these areas of higher pressure and lower pressure. And so what it's doing is it will actually try to move air from that high pressure towards that low pressure. And that moving air is what we call wind. And so that's pretty cool because it just wants everything to be one pressure. It doesn't want all these highs and lows. And so we've always got that moving air. And I'm looking out my window right now and I really don't see much movement in the trees or the plants. So even though it's not like considered windy today, the air is still moving. So that's something to keep in mind. And let's dive in a little closer now even and look at what exactly high pressure looks like and what low pressure looks like. With high pressure, we generally have clearing skies, calm conditions, and this is because the air is sinking to the ground. It's sinking to the ground and then it spreads out, it diverges. Again, remember, we're moving air from high pressure to low pressure to try to reach that equilibrium. And so then as that air is moving towards those areas of low pressure, once they meet in the middle, they go upward. As air moves upward, remember it gets colder. And as it gets colder, it starts to condense. If we have enough air moving up fast enough, we might get clouds. If it's even stronger than that, we could see storms, we could see snow. And so another way to remember the difference between high pressure and low pressure, and this is general, but still, high pressure is like happy weather, and low pressure is lousy weather. And so now though, we've got these high pressures and low pressures, but there are other features that we look at a lot, and they are the boundaries essentially in between that high pressure and low pressure. And we call those fronts. And the first front that I want to talk about is the warm front. Now the warm front, warm air relocates cold air at the surface. This type of front generally moves more slowly, and it's more of a gradual lift, as you can see in this graphic. Now we can still get storms, showers, snow, but they just don't tend to be quite as strong as when it comes to its counterpart, the cold front. Now the cold front, it's cold air relocating warm air at the surface. It moves more rapidly, and you can see it looks more intense. And so cold air, it sinks, and warm air on its own rises. But when a cold front's moving through, it pushes that warm air up even more intensely. And as more air is being pushed up, we have a greater chance at seeing thunderstorms, and a lot of times this is where they can become severe, or even if we're talking about winter, maybe heavier snow. And so again, the warm front is where we see our most vigorous weather. And so let's take a look at at a cold front and just a general idea of how it can move across the country. A cold front on the map is blue, and you can see that line here, and it's got triangles. And the triangles point in the direction that the front is moving. Same with the warm front, that's labeled red, and it's got circles, but those circles are still pointing in the way that the front is moving. So in this example, we've got some clearer skies, warmer temperatures on the East Coast, getting a little cloudier in the central part of the United States, and then we have that front. And we've got those storms along that front. And then sometimes we might have some showers, immediately behind it. As it moves across the country, it's going to move those storms with it, some of those showers behind it, and it's also bringing in that colder air. And as it continues towards the eastern part of the country, again, bringing that cold air and those storms with it. And you can see though, eventually, when you get a little further behind, enough behind that front, high pressure is going to start kicking in again. It's going to clear things out, and we'll see temperatures on the rebound. And so, with these high pressures and fronts, these are things that we track, we locate and track on a regular basis to help us do our job with the forecast. They help us know what's happening now and help us know what's going to happen in the future. And so I wanted to show you now what these look like, kind of real time, if you will. And so this graphic is from this morning. It's valid from 7 a.m. this morning to 7 a.m. tomorrow. And this is just a surface graphic that the Weather Prediction Center created for what to expect in that 24 hours. You can see we have areas of high pressure across the country. We do have some spots with lower pressure. And then we also have some shaded regions. We've got this cold front in the southeast part of the United States. That shaded region is rain and thunderstorms. Closer to home, we see some green shade, and then we also see that blue-purple. Oh boy. So, looks like we've got some rain chances today, but also some rain-snow mix chances to our north. That would be for tonight. And you can see a cold front draped across our area. And then further out in the northwest, we've got some snow chances with another low pressure there as well. And so we talked about how high pressure tends to be happy weather, low pressure tends to be lousy weather. Now, we've talked mostly about the surface with those features, and those were general statements, but there's a lot more to the atmosphere than just what's near the ground. We're not going to cover that today, but there's a lot more that we look at that's higher up that also influences the weather that we see at the ground. And so that brings me to the fact that we can have these high pressures, these low pressures, these fronts, these features that try to give us, our rain and our snows, but it's not going to happen if we don't have enough moisture or enough water in the atmosphere. We definitely need our water, and water is a pretty amazing molecule. We see it here on Earth in all the phases of matter, and we look at that as meteorologists. We are always trying to determine, are we going to see, especially in the winter, are we going to see liquid? Are we going to see that rain? Are we going to see a solid? Is it going to be snowflakes? Are we going to see a little mix of the two? But the one that people aren't as familiar with is the gaseous state of water, and that's water vapor. And we look at that all the time as well. And basically it's you can't see it. It's in the air. Water vapor is in the air just like oxygen, but you can't see it. But eventually it will, like we said, when the air rises, it'll condense and become liquid. If it's high enough in the atmosphere, it can then become a solid, or maybe it goes straight from water vapor to a solid, which would be like an ice crystal. And so, that leads me then to the Earth's water cycle. The water cycle for the Earth is much like how we recycle our glasses, our cardboard, our plastics. The Earth does the same thing with its water. It starts with evaporation coming from the ocean, going up into the sky. It will condensate, forming clouds. If there's enough of it, then it might, have precipitation falling right back down. We could have it be some snow could melt and eventually work its way back into the ground. But it all comes back to the ocean, and then it'll start all back over again with that cycle. But the main part of the water cycle that we as meteorologists focus on the most is going to be here on the left. That evaporation, that condensation, that transportation. Where is it going to go? How far is it going to move? And then that precipitation. Every now and then, though, if we get enough rain, we might have to worry about, what's going to happen on the ground, and are we going to experience flooding? Now, I have some interesting, fun water facts to give with this water cycle slide, and that is a drop of water. Did you know a drop of water may spend over 3,000 years in the ocean before it is evaporated and put back in the water cycle? That is a really long time. I found that really interesting. And then the second fact that I have is the average drop can spend an average of 8 days in the atmosphere before it falls back down to Earth. So it can hang out for almost over a week before it comes back down and joins the water cycle in that way. So that's pretty cool. So that is all I have for you today, though. If there are any questions, please feel free to type them in. I don't see one just yet, so I will wait a little bit here to see if anything pops in.
Okay, I think we can probably kill her there. A lot of the questions didn't have to do with the presentation, but I thought it was a good basics for people to start with. Where does our weather come from? What drives it? How does it keep going? How does it work around the world? She did a great job with that.
Yeah, I think she did, and with our limitations that we have for streaming, it's possible we may want to reserve those presentation videos for after we do our talks, because it kind of throws you guys out of the mix because you can't see her. And if you share it off your screen, and especially with you, Patty, sharing it, I was getting like a 2-frame update per second. It was not.
That's not good.
That didn't look too
But
great.
that explains what they do on Hymn Nation. They actually have the producers show the videos that they've
Right.
saved. And this was a Facebook feed, so it's a little different. But
Right.
so it's something we've learned today as we progress along this path.
I mean,
So,
there's no problem doing those, and they look good. It does work. It's just that you all can't see it on Skype.
well, no, but we can pull up the live feed
Right.
and kill our mics. So,
Okay. Well, I guess I'm going to make one last circle around for any more additional questions. And then we can do our 73 round.
Okay. Well, I guess I can say I didn't get a real good chance to watch all of that. I was staring at all your pretty faces, and when I realized I need to go watch the YouTube channel, we were halfway through it. So I ended up, I'll probably end up watching this later, just on my own, just so that I can understand it a little better. We can also put in the show notes of this link so that people can go and see it on their own too, if there was any kind of issue there with us trying to show it here. So anyway, I'm like I said, I'm excited about what this channel is going to bring, and it's just a learning experience, so everybody can learn with us, and hopefully we'll be able to grow our audience. So go ahead, Franklin.
I am probably going to review the video later on myself, just to kind of see how the feed and everything went and how it looked and everything. But I think this was a great first try. Not everything is going to be perfect the first time or two or 10. But we will get there. We'll make adjustments, and we'll figure out better ways to do things, and how to make things go more smoothly and everything as we go on and such. Just hope that people bear with us as we go through these growing pains of figuring out how to do all of this stuff, kind of echoing what Rodney said earlier. We're not professionals at this. We are amateurs, and we are volunteers, so we just have our own time and effort and resources to put into it. But we're going to try to make it as best as we can, as high quality and high standards as we possibly can, so that we can bring you guys a good quality product, and all have a little bit of fun while doing it and watching it as well. So I think I'll go ahead and pass it on over to Patty.
thank you, Franklin. And I agree. I believe this was a great first run. And, we're going to have our glitches along the way. Even the professionals do. But hopefully a great learning tool, not only for us, but for those who choose to join our channel and follow along. And I'm excited for what the future may bring. So with that, I will turn it over to Steve.
All right. Well, I have to echo all of your sentiments, and I am learning OBS and its limitations, which we may, as I go, I may be able to work around some of them. But you know what? The goal was getting some good information out to everyone, and we've done that. So I'm pretty happy with that. And with that, we'll go ahead and start around again for our 73 round.
All right. So for anybody that doesn't know what a 73 round is, this is when you get on net and you say, hey, here's my piece. It's kind of like your exit stage left. You just basically go in there and say, guys, thanks for a good time. Looking forward to seeing you next week. And so 73, as they would say, and I will turn it over to Franklin and say, I'm clear.
Thank you, Rodney. Yes, and in case some people do not know what 73 actually means, it's from Morse code. It's best regards or best wishes. So I will send my 73s out to everyone who's been with us tonight, and look forward to doing it again here next week. And with that, I will pass it over to Patty.
Thank you, Franklin. And you stole the words right out of my mouth. 73 comes from Morse code. It was an easy way to send best wishes without having to do all of the keying. There's another one, and I'm going to say 73 and 88, which is basically sending my hugs to all who are watching as well, from KD0AEL.
All right, and this is KA0SPM 73. And we appreciate everyone joining us this evening. And even if you're not watching it live, you still get the same sentiment of 73. So, and we'll go ahead and turn the net back over to normal operation, whatever that might be.
Bye,
Goodbye.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.